Hey everybody, it's Mike here, and welcome once again to our live IncrediChats here on the IncrediCon page. Yes, my son wants to pop in. Hello, look at this cute little face there. Caleb's popping in. Go back to your games now, little buckaroo. All right, so tonight we've got a very, very exciting IncrediChat for everybody. Tonight on IncrediChat, I'm pretty excited about this because our guest is none other than the creator, the father of one of my favorite cartoon characters growing up from one of my favorite films, Roger Rabbit. So welcome to tonight's IncrediChat, Gary K. Wolf, author.
Hey.
There he is, Gary Wolf. Hello, Gary. Welcome to the show. Welcome. So I guess for our IncrediChat tonight, the place to start off, we said Roger Rabbit. You're his dad. How was he born?
Well,
the best place to start. How was he born?
I tell you, it starts way back when I was in the second or third grade. I don't remember. And I was in school, and my teacher gave the class a picture to color, and the whole object of coloring the picture was to stay inside the lines. That was all you had to do, stay inside the lines. And the picture showed a farm scene. There was a farmhouse, there was a barn, there was a fence, there was a meadow, and there was a cow out in the middle of the meadow. So I took that picture home that night, and nobody stayed inside the lines better than I did. I was terrific at staying inside the lines. So I colored the barn red. I'm from a farm town, and I knew barns red. All the houses in my farm town were yellow, so I colored them all yellow. Colored the grass green, and then I saw that cow all out there in the middle of the field, all by itself. And my mother had always told me that when people were all by themselves, they got sad, they got lonely, and they got blue. So I colored that cow blue. Right. So I passed my paper in the next day. And the day after that, the teacher handed them all back, all except for mine. And she said, Gary, she says, come on up here and stand in front of the class. And I thought, oh my God, I stayed inside the lines better than anybody. So I went up to the front of the class, and she had me face the class. And then she put that picture up over my head. And she said, class, look at this stupid picture. She said, everybody knows that cows are brown, cows are black, cows are white, cows are sometimes brown, black, and white, all three. Never are cows blue. She says, Gary, don't ever do that again. She called my mother, and my mother had to go to school. And the teacher said, I think there's something wrong with Gary. He's coloring cows blue. So my mother and my father that night called me into the living room, and they said to me, Gary, why did you color this cow blue? We're really worried about you. Your teacher's worried about you. And I said, Ma, it was you. You were the one. You told me people get sad and lonely, they get blue. I thought, cow, it's sad and lonely, color him blue. And so they said, well, Gary, you go outside and play. Your father and I have to talk about this. Now, you have to know my parents. My mother had to drop out of school in the 8th grade to go to work. They were children of the Depression. My father had to drop out of school in the 3rd grade to go to work. He ran the town pool hall. She worked in the school cafeteria. Now, these were not what you would call upscale urban liberals. I mean, these were hard scrabble working people. And I didn't think this was going to have a happy ending. And so, by golly, about 15 minutes later, they called me back in. And my mother said to me, she said, your father and I talked about this. And we decided the next time you want to color a cow blue, you go ahead and color a cow blue. And that one piece of advice pretty well set me on the direct path to Roger Rabbit. I mean, I have colored a ton of cows blue since then. And what my parents gave me in that conversation was the confidence to believe in my own creativity, no matter what other people say. And my mother called the teacher, She called the teacher at the school. So next time Gary colors your cow blue, you just go ahead and let him color cow blue. So about 3 weeks later, we got another assignment, and it was to write out what we did on our summer vacation.
Yeah.
And of course, all of the other kids wrote about going to Wisconsin fishing or going here or going there. And I wrote a pretty good short story about how I went out in my backyard on my vacation and built a rocket ship out of tin cans and flew to the moon. And my teacher the next day just gave it back to me and said, "Oh, that was interesting." So that was kind of the genesis of Roger Rabbit right there.
Imagination based, really.
It's all imagination based. It's all what's going on in your head and how you see the world and how you see things that other people either don't see or can't conceive of. Where Roger and the whole concept specifically came from, I was a pretty well-known science fiction writer around San Francisco. I had written 4 science fiction novels. And every time I would write a novel, Doubleday would just give me a contract for another novel, write whatever you want. And it was pretty good for me. So
around like the mid to late 70s you were doing this?
Yeah, mid to late 70s, exactly. Yeah. And so actually I think it started in like 70, 76 maybe. I was a lot faster in those days than I was. My first novel took me, I don't know, like 6 months. My second novel took me a year. Third novel a year and a half. And when I just got through writing, actually it took me 5 months of quarantine time, but should have taken me 3 years. Anyway, I had a contract for a novel, and I had written science fiction novels, and I wanted to push the envelope. I wanted to do something that nobody had ever done before. And I wanted to do something that incorporated my 2 boyhood loves. One of them was comic books, cartoons, and comic strips. That was what I read. Again, my mother, good mother that she was, she said to me, says, "Gary, if you want to get out of this farm town, 1,400 people in this farm town, you want to get out of this farm town, you don't want to wind up running your father's pool hall. The one thing you can do to make that happen is to read, and that will get you out of here." But good mother that she was, she didn't put any restrictions on what I could read. So I read comic books. I read Superman and Batman and Archie and whatever I could get my hands on. And my father, on the other hand, he wasn't a big reader. He could read, but he didn't read for enjoyment. What he read were what they had in those days, and they called them true crime magazines.
Okay.
And I don't know, I don't think there's an equivalent today, but if you ever saw the Tom Hanks movie, Road to Perdition, Jude Law played a photographer who would go to crime scenes and photograph dead bodies and then sell those to crime magazines. That was what was going on. And my dad was reading those magazines, and he had them laying all over the house, and so I was reading them. And again, my mother, good mother that she was, didn't say, "Hey, don't read those will rot your brain." So luckily I graduated from those to hard-boiled noir crime fiction, Raymond Chandler, and good writers. So my 2 loves were cartoons, comic strips, and comic books, and noir mysteries. And I was looking for a way to put those together. How can I marry those? And I was looking for a concept. So I was watching Saturday morning cartoons one Saturday morning, for research. I told my wife, I'm just watching. And I became fascinated, not with the cartoons themselves, but with the commercials. Because I saw cartoon characters. I saw Captain Crunch, the Trix Rabbit, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Tony the Tiger, cartoon characters talking to real kids. Nobody seemed to think that was odd. And I said, wow, what a great idea for a book. What if I had a world where cartoon characters were real? What kind of a world would that be? So I spent almost a year just researching comic books, cartoons, and comic strips to see what happened there that didn't happen in a human world.
Mm-hmm.
And after I had that all laid out and had my world built, then I invented Eddie Valiant, named him after my father.
All right.
Yeah, Eddie Wolf, and named him.
What was the inspiration for Eddie? There you go.
Absolutely, you know, all those true crime magazines he read finally came home to roost. So I named him after my father, and I came up with a story that would only work in a cartoon universe,
Mm-hmm.
and wrote the book. Yeah, and that's where it came from. Roger Rabbit, I based Roger Rabbit kind of on a combination of Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
Got this kind of sensibilities of a Mickey Mouse,
Mm-hmm.
but he's kind of got the rabbity look of a Bugs Bunny. You know, like Bugs will slap you on the back and put a stick of dynamite down your pants. But
Yeah.
you know, Mickey would never do that. And Roger would never do that. I based Jessica on, well, Jessica is my ideal woman. Think of that what you will. But in my hometown back in Illinois, through some flaw of genetics, the boys outnumber the girls by 35 to 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so try and get a date if you're the president of the Checkers Club, right? So Jessica was kind of my ideal woman, and she was based on Tex Avery's Red Hot Riding Hood.
Okay.
But in terms of real women, she was Ava Gardner, a lot of Veronica Lake with the hairdo.
Mm-hmm.
She was just my perfect woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been told in later years by Hollywood people that if Jessica is my idea of the ideal woman, maybe I should stick to writing like Turkish prison movies or war movies where I don't have to deal with feminine issues. Baby Herman was a grown-up baby, and when I was reading comic books and you know, looking at comic strips, there were a lot of those. There was Baby Huey, and there were a lot of those. And so he is actually probably my best character, because when I submitted the manuscript to my agent to give to Doubleday to print, my agent said, "Oh, you can't use this Baby Herman character." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, he's not your character." I said, "No, he is." And my agent was convinced that he had seen Baby Herman somewhere else. And so that's, you know, it was successful. But that's where everybody came from. Yeah.
Now, you said, so you first saw with the commercials with those characters talking to the kids, and you mentioned like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny. So while you were doing your research for this, were there comic strips? Were there particular theatrical or Saturday morning cartoons or the works of anybody that really stood out to you as you were developing this Toontown world, these characters like Chuck Jones, Frizz Freeling, any of those kind of guys?
Yeah, you know, I didn't know enough about cartoons in those days to realize that like Frizz Freeling and Chuck Jones, I didn't know that these were people who were making cartoons.
Yeah.
I wasn't reading the credits in those days. Nowadays, I'm the last guy to leave the movie because I'm always reading all the credits.
Absolutely.
But in those days, I was a kid, and I would just look at a cartoon, and I wouldn't read the credits, and I didn't know who had drawn it. So it wasn't so much a person as a style, kind of a feeling. I had a real feeling for the wacky antics that cartoon characters did. What my research showed me was one thing that especially comic book and newspaper characters did that humans couldn't do was talking word balloons. I was fascinated by that. So in the first novel, Who Censored Roger Rabbit, all of the cartoon characters are actually characters from comic books and comic strips, and they all talk in word balloons.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. So that's why I even mentioned like with comic strips. Well, I mean, obviously you must have read some of these classic comic strips too. So if there was some inspiration from some of those,
I read all of them. Yeah, and it was fun for me because it gave me an element that I could play with and have fun with that actually nobody else had even ever thought about using. And so when in the book, when you talk to a cartoon character, you know, and he talks back to you, he puts up a word balloon, and then you have to read his word balloon. So if he turns around, his word balloon also turns around. So you either have to learn how to read in reverse, or you have to go around to the other side of him so you can read for it. When a cartoon character plays the piano, he puts up notes that come out of the piano, and people will take those notes and cut them into 8x10 sheets, and that's where sheet music comes from. And if somebody shoots a tune using a tune gun, puts up a bang balloon, and the bang balloon solidifies and kind of gets very brittle, but you can take the bang balloon and compare it to a bang balloon from another tune gun and see if it's the same gun, right? So I had all kinds of fun playing with the convention of word balloons.
Yeah.
And you know, to flip forward to the movie, one of the early ideas, because the animators and Disney people love the word balloon idea. They wanted to use the word balloons for the characters, and they tried for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they realized quite early on that when they put up a word balloon, it made it into a silent movie. You know, you would be talking to a tune would put up a word balloon. The audience would have to read the word balloon, and then boom, it goes on. So it just didn't work. But they did want to have an homage to my word balloon. And in the movie, they had a scene where Marvin Acme had a funeral. It was Marvin Acme's funeral. And his coffin was being carried by 6 like goofy Looney Tunes. Like,
this is one of those like deleted scenes that never.
Yeah, and they had Goofy and Bozo and 6 really funny characters, and they're carrying Marvin Acme's casket, and they start laughing, and they can't stop laughing, and pretty soon everybody's laughing, right? And they walk by Felix the cat, and Felix the cat, you know, was in cartoons in the 20s, 30s, early 40s, and never spoke. Even his cartoon, even his comic strips, he never spoke. So they walked by Felix the cat, and Felix the cat put up a word balloon over his head that said "sob," and it then turned into tears and disintegrated and fell down all over his shoulders and got him all wet. And that was my homage to word balloons. But you know, the rule of thumb is that if you're doing a movie for kids, it's got to be no more than 90 minutes. And I honestly didn't know if this was going to be a movie for kids or a movie for adults. And first cut ran about an hour and 45. 40.
Gotcha.
So they had to cut scenes, and that was one of the scenes they cut. And so my homage wound up on the cutting room floor.
Now let me ask. So you wrote this book. It came out in 81. So right about 81. So how did Disney discover it? Because I mean, how did Roger go Hollywood at that point?
Well, I'll back up one, because having it come out in 81 wasn't a sure thing either. Like I say, I had a contract with Doubleday, and really all I had to do was send them a book and they would print it. That was how it was. My first 4 books. I had no reason to doubt that was how it would be in this book. I had never had a reject. I had written, 50 short stories and 4 novels. Never had a reject. So I finished Roger Rabbit, sent it to Doubleday, and they rejected it. My editor called me up and said, "Gary, I'm sorry, but we can't publish this." And I said, "Sure, why? It's the best thing I've ever written. Why can't you? It's far better than those other 4 pieces of trash you published. And she said, well, it's so different from anything you've written before. And it's so different from anything anybody's written before that I had to send it over to the marketing department. And they were the ones who rejected it. So I called the head of the marketing department. I said, hey, Chuck, why did you reject my book? And he said, well, everybody here loved it. We love the book. But there's no category for it on the bookstore shelves. It's not a regular adult novel. It's not fantasy. It's not really a mystery novel. It's not a children's book. I've got no category for it.
Yeah.
I can't sell this book. And I said, all right, Chuck, let me ask you, what would you do if somebody gave you Gulliver's Travels, Wizard of Oz, or Alice in Wonderland? What would you do with those?
Yeah.
And he thought about it for a minute. He says, couldn't sell those either. So they rejected it. And I was crestfallen. Well, what am I going to do now? So I went to my agent. I said, Bill, what are we going to do? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll find a home for this. And I said, because if I can't write this, I don't want to be a writer anymore, because this is what I want to write.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So he started sending it out to other publishers, very often different editors at the same publisher, because they have different interests. And along the way, we piled up 110 rejects.
Wow.
Roger Rabbit was rejected 110 times. Yeah. And in those days, you used to get them. You didn't get it by email, which is somehow worse, because now you can get rejected on a weekend too. But you used to get them in the mail. They used to come as reject slips in the mail.
Sure.
And my wife started referring to me going out to the mailbox every day as the daily disappointments.
Oh my
Because
God.
I'd go out every day and there'd be like 2, 3 rejects. And then finally, and it was always for the same reason. Editors loved it. They'd send it to the marketing department. Sorry,
Where did it go?
we can't sell it. So finally, it went to St. Martin's Press. And there was an editor there named Rebecca Martin.
Okay.
And Rebecca had just published a major bestseller for them. So the president of St. Martin's Press said to her, I'll give you a vanity project. You can publish any book you want. Whatever book tickles your fancy, I'll let you publish that book. And just the day after he told her that, Roger Rabbit came across her desk. So she read it. Of course, she loved it. She took it to the president of St. Martin's and said, here's my book. This is my vanity project. I'm going to publish this book. And he said, okay, let me take it home. I'll read it tonight. He took it home, read it that night, came back the next day and said, Rebecca, said, I told you could publish any book you wanted, but you can't publish this because I can't sell it. And Rebecca stepped up to the plate and said, publish it or I quit.
Wow.
And that was the start of it all. They published it, albeit in very small quantities. I think they published 2,000 copies, which is nothing. And if I had my writing career to live over again, right, if I could change one thing, I would go back to 1981 when that book came out at $2.98 a copy.
We can't get like that anymore.
I'd buy them all, because now if you go on eBay, those books are selling for $350, $370.
The original ones.
Yeah. So anyway, I sold it in 1980, but because of the publishing lag, it wasn't going to come out until 1981.
Gotcha.
It was a 1-year lag. So it was mid 1980. And I get this call at home on my home phone. And I answer, and the voice on the other end says Gary K. Wolf. I said, yeah, it is. She says, hi, this is Roy Disney.
Oh, wow. That's a call.
Yeah, right. Roy Disney calling me at home. Right. Who is this really? He says, no, really, it's Roy Disney. And I just read your book. And I want to know if you'd be interested in having Disney make this book into a movie. And I'm thinking, the book hasn't come out yet. Who is this guy? Okay, it's one of my friends, Josh and me. And it turned out that somebody at St. Martin's Press, I never found out who, and I tried because I wanted to kiss her or him full on the lips, but somebody had sent a copy of the manuscript, the typeset manuscript, over to Disney saying, I think you'd like this book. And it made its way to Roy Disney, and he did indeed like this book. And so it actually hadn't even come out as a book yet. And he said, you know, all right, would you be interested in letting Disney make this into a movie? Now, they had a lot of reasons for wanting this movie based on this book, because this was 1980, 1981, and they were in danger of becoming a second or even third-rate movie production house. I mean, they were making The Nutty Professor and The Black Hole and The Black Cauldron, which disappeared down the black hole. And, you know, they were making for the second half of double bills, double features, and there were no more double features. So they were in danger of going out of business. They'd been offered E.T. and they turned it down. They'd been offered Star Wars and they turned it down. So they really needed something to reestablish themselves as a major player in the movie business, and they saw this as being that. Plus, their stable of characters was getting a little stale. You know, they had Mickey Mouse, but he was kind of the corporate spokesmouse now, and you couldn't really have fun with him. They had Donald Duck. You could have fun with him, but you couldn't understand what he said. So, you know, they wanted Roger Rabbit. They wanted my stable of characters so that they would, you know, expand their merchandise line. I don't know if you noticed, but Disney makes a lot of money selling raincoats and lunch boxes. Oh.
So it's amazing when you go to the parks. At the moment,
really.
Then all of a sudden, everybody's got a poncho.
So they actually offered me more money for the movie rights than I'd made for all my writing up to that time put together. And I said, you know, absolutely. I really, if you read the book is a book, and it's meant to appeal to a reader's imagination. Like the word balloons, and there's all kinds of conventions in it that are very clear when you read them because you can visualize them in your imagination. I didn't think anybody could ever turn this book into a movie. I didn't think that was going to be possible. But, you know, if they were willing to try, I was fine with letting them. And it started in mid-1980, and it was a real roller coaster because in the beginning, they kind of proved I was right. They really didn't have the talent, the expertise, the technology, the vision to turn that book into a movie. They really didn't. And they experimented with live action animation, couldn't make it work. So one day, Roy Disney came to me and said, Gary, you know, we've been thinking about this. What would you say if we did this as an all live action movie and we had the cartoon characters in costume like they have them at Disneyland?
Oh, wow.
That
would be good.
I'm going to have Fred McMurray as Eddie Valiant. I'm going to have Dean Jones as the rabbit, Haley Mills as Jessica, and Kurt Russell as Baby Herman. And I thought, you know, doesn't that compromise the premise just a little bit? And finally they realized, yes, it did. And so they went off and kind of spun their wheels. And then in probably 84, maybe early 85, a couple of things happened. Michael Eisner came on board and brought Jeff Katzenberg with him. Mm-hmm. Michael Eisner came in as the head of Disney overall, and Jeff Katzenberg came in as head of Disney Motion Pictures. And when new management comes in, the first thing they do is they throw out all the projects that old management was working on, because that's what got old management in trouble. And they did that, all except for Roger Rabbit, which was the one project that old management was working on that new management kept, because they knew they had to make this movie. And they did something that nobody had ever done before at Disney. They brought in an outside producer, little known guy named Steve Spielberg.
Oh,
right? Yeah. And they had both worked with him before on Jaws and a number of other things. And to show you the difference that Steve Spielberg makes in Hollywood, back in 1981, 82, Roy Disney went to Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we're making this movie. It's going to be live action animation. It's going to have cartoon characters and real people in a unified world. We want to have Bugs Bunny up here on screen and just for 15 seconds to say, "What's up, Doc?" and walk off. And Warner Brothers looked at Walt Disney and said, "Get out of here. No way is Bugs Bunny ever going to be in a Walt Disney picture. It's just never going to happen. Forget it. Never going to happen." So 5 years later, Steve Spielberg goes in and makes the identical request. "Hey, we want Bugs Bunny for What's Up, Doc?" And they say, "Of course. Of course. Well, what about Porky Pig? What about Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? What about Yosemite Sam? What about Tweety Bird and Sylvester? Take them all. Take them all."
Because just like you were saying, at that point in time too, I think animation was really living on Saturday mornings at that point. At Saturday mornings, but and that was really Hanna-Barbera driven, and then you had all the syndicated stuff in the afternoon, like He-Man and G.I. Joe. So like those older classic characters from Disney and from Warner Brothers, they were just all. They
might as well have been dead. The only restriction, and I mean, he got them for some ridiculous licensing fee. I mean, it was ridiculous. I could have paid for it myself out of the money I make delivering newspapers in the morning. It was the only requirement was Bugs Bunny had a for real contract, and Bugs Bunny was a bona fide superstar and the equivalent of Mickey Mouse. So Bugs and Mickey had to be in every scene together. You could not have Mickey in a scene without Bugs. Bugs had to be in every scene with Mickey. And they had to have the same exact identical number of words, dialogue. So you can go through, watch the movie, count the words, and you'll see. And I'll tell you one little story out of school. The animators, of course, the animators knew this, and so in the scene where Bugs and Mickey are parachuting down, well, they wanted to give Bugs a little gotcha. So there are things called gags in the margins. I don't know if you know about these.
Yeah, well, like little hidden, which Roger Rabbit is notoriously full of these little hidden.
Yeah, gags in the margins are. Film goes through a projector at 24 frames a second, and animators figured out you could screw around with 6 of those frames and the human eye couldn't see it. And so Roger Rabbit has got a number of those gags in the margins. Well, in the scene where Mickey and Bugs are going down, if you look at that frame by frame, originally you were supposed to see that Mickey was giving Bugs the finger. Okay?
Really?
Yes. So the animators who were doing this, were a real hodgepodge of very talented people, but a lot of them had come over from Eastern Europe, and they were working in London with Dick Williams, and they didn't all speak English. So if you wanted to speak to the Czechoslovakian guy, you sometimes had to go to the French guy, you'd speak to the Russian guy, you'd speak to the Czechoslovakian guy. So some foreign animator got this assignment to have Mickey giving Bugs the finger, and he screwed it up. So if you look at that frame by frame, you will see that, yes, indeed, one of them is giving one of them the finger, but it's Bugs who's giving Mickey the finger.
Oh, my God. But probably more in character for Bugs, because
absolutely works with the milieu, as we say. Yes.
Now let me just ask you, because I do want to get into talking about Roger and the other characters. So you said Bugs and Mickey had this kind of contract. Was that similar for? Do you know if that was the same for that scene with Daffy and Donald too? Because that's a great scene in the film as well.
Great scene, yeah. And all the animators, you know, I would sometimes find myself in a room with 35 of the most creative people I have ever met in my life, and they were all throwing out ideas on how to make my story better and funnier.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, you know, if I had had these 35 guys in my kitchen when I was working on the book from like 5 until 7 every morning until I went to work, I would have had a Pulitzer Prize winner, you know? So that was one of the things that just kind of came out. They wanted to do a scene with with Donald and Daffy. Everybody wanted to see a scene with Donald and Daffy. And they worked it and they worked it and they worked it. And then they came up with the dueling pianos. And it was just hilarious. I mean, it's just hilarious.
And these two characters that have these immense egos anyways, which, which is just great. So now let's go on to like Roger and Jessica and Baby Herman and Benny. So I mean, and Roger star in his own right. But let me ask, when Disney looked at this and you had this vision of Jessica, was there any pushback about her sexiness? No,
not at all.
Early on?
Not at all. Steve got it, and Bob Zemeckis, who came in as director, got it.
Yeah.
In fact, I think if you were to ask Steve Spielberg his favorite character, it is Jessica. And there was never any pressure brought on any of them to make her more of an ordinary woman. I mean, she was the epitome of sex. She was sex personified in a cartoon. And
there she is.
There you go. Right. And oddly, she was the hardest character for the animators to animate because they were used to animating pigs and ducks and rabbits and chickens and geese and foxes, and they did not know how to animate not only a woman but the absolute essence of woman.
Sure.
They had a lot of trouble with it. So Bob Zemeckis, brilliant man that he was and is. We were filming this in London. Steve likes the food there, you know. Go figure. I don't know. But we were filming in London, and the animators were having a lot of trouble with Jessica. So he went to a strip club in London's East End or West End or wherever the strip clubs are in London, and he hired a stripper, and he brought her to the studio, and he filmed her in a red dress doing Jessica's number, and then walking out and doing everything that Jessica did, so that you know the animators could see her body movements. Then he filmed her again in bra and panties, and then he filmed her again naked. All right, and for weeks after that, you could hear the animator saying, "Wow, you know, I've been here so long, I forgot what a woman looks like. Let's watch the film again."
Nice. And then Roger, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, much of the credit to Roger goes to Charles Fleischer, because
absolutely. As I say, when I wrote that, Roger didn't have a voice. He talked in word balloons.
Yeah.
So I never heard Roger in my mind. But after I saw the movie, and after I hung around with Charlie, and after I heard Charlie voicing Roger on the set, forever after, Charlie will be the voice of my Roger Rabbit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's great footage. I think it's on some of the DVD and Blu-ray features, and certainly in that prop culture thing you and I were talking before the show about. I mean, there's great video and there's great footage of him. He had the full costume, and he was on there talking to Bob Hoskins and everybody, full on in character.
And let's take a break here and throw a big kudo to Bob Hoskins, because without Bob Hoskins, this whole project would have failed. You know, he was not the first choice. And in fact, he wasn't the second or the third or probably even the 15th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The first choice, everybody wanted Harrison Ford. He couldn't commit because the shooting schedule was too long. Everybody wanted Paul Newman. He couldn't commit. So they started having casting calls. They looked at William Peterson, who I think probably would have done a good job.
Mhm.
They brought in Kurt Russell for a while, and then finally they found the guy that would be the perfect Eddie Valiant, and that guy, of course, was Bill Murray, right?
Oh wow, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, so they hired Bill Murray, and it became obvious really quickly that Bill Murray was not the right guy. Bill Murray not only couldn't make you believe the rabbit was real, he couldn't believe the rabbit was real. He was always looking at it like, oh my God, you're a talking rabbit. So,
and he's kind of a cartoon himself in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
At least at that part of his career.
Yeah, so they paid him out of his contract, gave him $1 million, and sent him other people, and they finally found the guy that was the perfect Eddie Valiant, and that, of course, was Eddie Murphy, right? Eddie Murphy. So they bring in Eddie Murphy, and for the 2 weeks that Eddie Murphy was there, everybody is rewriting the script to make Eddie Valiant funnier than the Toons. So this is not going to work. So they pay off Eddie Murphy, and he gets $1 million and a new Ferrari, right?
Oh
and I think you're starting to see how you make money in Hollywood here.
There you go.
Right. So in the meantime, over on the other side of Hollywood, Brian De Palma is making The Untouchables.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wants Bobby De Niro for Al Capone. But Bobby De Niro was unavailable. So he hired Bob Hoskins. And a couple of weeks into the shooting, Bobby De Niro calls De Palma and says, hey, I'm available after all. So now Bob Hoskins has got $1 million and nothing to do, right? So they said, hey, we're gonna listen to this English guy, Bob Hoskins. Want to come? And, yeah, sure. I really did not believe, because I think Bob Hoskins was a great actor. I mean, I'd seen him in Mona Lisa, I'd seen him in The Last Good Friday, and I thought he was just an incredible actor. But he was British, for God's sake. And he was not just British. I mean, he was British, and almost Cockney English. And I said, there's no way that this guy is going to be able to pass himself off as a prototypical LA private eye. It's just, he's not going to be able to do it. But when I saw him do the reading, not only did he do the American accent but he had the aura about him, and he had the cockiness of an LA private eye, and he was the only one that made you believe that rabbit was real. I mean, he was talking to nothing, and he made you believe that rabbit was right there talking back at him. My one regret for the movie, I think it's a phenomenal movie. My one regret is that he didn't even get nominated for an Academy Award, because he made it look so easy. Nobody realized that there were times when he was standing in a totally empty studio in front of a green screen, making everything up in his mind, and having you believe it was real. There, when he was handcuffed to the rabbit, watch that scene again. That handcuff is on a spring. So not only is he controlling his hand, he's controlling the rabbit's hand. So he's moving his hand in one way and making it so that the rabbit's hand moves in another way. I mean, I could just go on and on. When he got thrown out of the Ink and Paint Club by the gorilla, he really landed badly, and he broke 3 ribs. Wow. And we thought, oh, this is gonna, a 3-week delay. He was there the next day, ribs taped up, ready to go. Wow. And just a phenomenal guy. So love him to death, and I miss him terribly.
Now, the one thing that's really interesting as we're sitting here talking, and you often hear this about folks like yourself, authors, writers, like they create the characters, they create the novels, they sell it off to like the Disneys or whomever, and that's it. But you obviously were hands-on there on the set. What was that like? And how did that come about?
I was as hands-on as I wanted to be. And Steve Spielberg and Bob Z kind of respected my vision. I mean, I was the guy that came up with this concept in the first place, and I came up with the characters, and they respected my vision on it. And even though the story was different, they kept the characters, they kept the premise, and they kind of valued my input. I was allowed to be there for as much or as little as I wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, um, to me, movie making is an incredibly boring operation. I mean, when Chris Lloyd was putting his hand in that rubber glove, you could just never get the hand to all the fingers into the glove. I mean, sometimes, 2 fingers would go and sometimes 3 fingers. And, they'd shoot it 50 times until they get it right and then break and go shoot the next scene 50 times until they get it right and then break and go have a terrible craft services lunch of cold spaghetti and meatballs. I'm a writer and I love writing my books. I spent time in England when they were filming in England. I spent time at Skywalker Ranch when they were doing the sound work.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. I spent a lot of time with the animators because I just love the animators, just as people. They were very funny. And I spent time in LA when they were filming in LA. But I didn't spend every waking moment of my life on the movie set. It's just nothing that I was that interested in and nothing fun. I had never seen the entire movie put together until the premiere at Radio City Music Hall. And I was sitting up in the balcony and I was up there with Kathleen Turner sitting on my right and who was, of course, the speaking voice of Jessica, and Amy Irving, who was Steve's wife at the time, who was the speaking voice of Jessica. Because for whatever reason, when it came time for Kathleen to sing the song, she couldn't sing the song, and she was pregnant at the time, so maybe she didn't have the breath control, or maybe she just can't sing. I don't know, but she couldn't sing the song, and so Steve Spielberg said to Amy Irving, hey, you sang in Yentl, why don't you give it a whack? Amy Irving sang the song, and I said, Steve, nobody's going to believe that Jessica has one voice when she sings and another voice when she speaks. He said, there's passage of time between when you hear one and you hear the other. Nobody's going to notice it. Nobody ever did. Kathleen, and of course, the voices were done early on, and nobody really knew if this movie was going to be a kid's movie, an adult movie, whether it was going to be any good, whether it was going to be Howard the Duck. So Kathleen decided to do what James Earl Jones did in Star Wars. James Earl Jones did Darth Vader uncredited. Nobody knew who he was, and that way he hedged his bets. If the movie was a roaring success, he would be the mystery man who voiced Darth Vader, and if it was a flop, who me?
Who knew?
Kathleen did the same thing, although Amy Irving did get credit. If you read the credits, you'll see no credit for Kathleen, but you'll see the main voice of Jessica Rabbit, Amy Irving. But anyway, I was sitting there with Kathleen on one side and Amy Irving on the other side. And I was going to see my movie all put together for the first time because they were still working on it up until a week before it.
Yeah.
And I was going to see the whole movie, and I was going to see my credit on screen for the very first time, right? And
it must have been huge.
And I'm thinking to myself, life just doesn't get any better than this. And then life got better than that because Kathleen leaned over and she put her hand on my knee and she whispered in my ear, she said, Gary, are you excited? And I said, Kathleen, you have no idea.
No, I mean that's probably I would say probably almost every writer's dream is like one of their books to do.
I've got so many writer friends, and I don't know if I'm the only guy that's happy with the movie and with the treatment he got on the movie, but I'm one of very few. I mean, most writers aren't as contented as I am. And people always say, well, the story's different in the movie. Yeah, the story had to be different in the movie. The movie and the book's a book. I wrote the book to be the best possible book I knew how to write. And the movie makers made that movie to be the best possible movie that they know how to make. In a book, it's all in your imagination. On the movie, it's all up there on screen.
It has to be.
It has to be. It has to be different. But like I say, they kept the premise, they kept the characters, and I'm just tickled to death with it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, and let me ask you. So this movie was a smash hit. I mean, and I know you continued writing the Toontown novels, but and Roger really was for some point in time like another corporate face for Disney in all, because that's one question. Like, he is owned by Disney, or is he's like in a weird kind of like Disney,
the contracts for who owns what and who has rights.
That's itself. Who owns Roger Rabbit, right?
They're actually probably longer. I think they're longer than anything I've written. They're probably longer than the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah, it's a corporate web, and lots of things happened. They were on their way to doing a sequel movie, and Jeff Katzenberg left, and there was a lot of bad blood. Then it goes through roller coasters. I mean, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'll tell you what I tell everybody when they ask me, is there going to be a sequel? And I'll say, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. One day you're going to be happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that. Hopefully that day will be soon. Yeah, because I mean, like we were saying, Roger was for a long time, and even like it was Disney World. There was an anniversary celebration, and he was out there popping out of the cakes, and he was very, very present in the parks. There were the three theatrical shorts. And I know there were supposed to have been more of those. And then there was even there's a Mickey's 60th birthday special with Roger, and then Charles was live action in that as well. But I mean, Roger was like a central character in that too. So like for a while, he was really part of that main core of Disney characters. And then all of a sudden,
I mean, my feeling is that I think that Disney, because of the Pixar influence, I think they're more interested in doing CGI characters, and I think they're more interested in coming up with new characters rather than mining their old characters. Realistically, you don't see much of Mickey Mouse anymore either. I mean, there's no
even the Disney Junior stuff, the kids stuff, which is weird too.
Yeah, Donald Duck, Goofy, all the classics. Instead, you see the newer characters, and it's way above my pay grade, so I can't.
well, let me ask you. I mean, as we're getting close to the end here, so you've written some Toontown novels. I know that the ones that followed the original book, you kind of retcon things a little bit to make them.
I had to, because for Who Censored Roger Rabbit, which was the first, I did that in a vacuum. I mean, that is entirely my own creation. And then the movie came out, and at last accounting, the movie has grossed over $1 billion. $1 billion with a B, which means that probably, I don't know, 250 million people have seen the movie, probably more, because they've seen it on DVD multiple times. 35 people read the book, and that was my mother and 10 of my aunts and a couple of random strangers who didn't like the cover. I don't know. So people's conception of Roger Rabbit was really the movie, not the book.
Yeah.
So when I wrote the first sequel, which was Who Plugged Roger Rabbit, where we standardized on the 4-piece stutter, I had to decide whether to be true to my original vision or whether to make Roger more like he was in the movie, and Jessica like they were in the movie. And I kind of came up with a hybrid. I didn't do a Disney sellout. I didn't make it completely Disneyized, but I wrote it so that people who saw the movie who didn't read the book would understand it and would be drawn into it.
Yeah.
With the third book, Whacked Roger Rabbit, enough time has passed that I went back to the original. And Who Whacked Roger Rabbit is closer to my original conception than Who Plugged. Actually, like I was mentioning earlier, since I've been in quarantine and locked down, and I have nothing else to do but sit here at this damn desk and write. I've been working 8 to 9 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I just finished Jessica Rabbit,
Oh, nice.
which is a Jessica Rabbit and Toontown origin story. Talks about how Jessica became Jessica and how Toontown came to be.
So and obviously you're still doing these stories, and I mean I assume the people over at Disney, and even Spielberg and Amblin, they like the fact that you're still playing around in these worlds and probably look over everything to be like you said, stay tuned. Potentially there could be something.
Well, like I say, stay tuned.
Yeah.
They did Disney did buy the rights to Who Plugged Roger Rabbit. They do own that. And for a while, that was going to be movie 2.
Exactly.
Who knows? I can't tell you.
Because I remember even as a teenager, I read they did the Roger Rabbit comic books where they introduced Rick Flint, who.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Who censored Rick Flint or something like that. Who came up with it? And I have no idea why they didn't use Eddie Valiant.
Well, from what I read was, I guess they weren't able to use the likeness of Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, that was it, because if they did Eddie Valiant, they would have to use Bob Hoskins' likeness. Interesting thing, but if you go to my website, and everybody should go to my website,
and that's scrolling right there in the bottom, Gary.
Scrolling right down in front of me here, and you look at the covers of my book, you will see that I am on the cover of Who Censored Roger Rabbit. That is me playing the detective. That book came out it went into paperback, and it went into like 26 printings, and then it became a hardcover double-day book club book. But on the book club book, they changed the cover to a drawing, and it took me off. Actually, sales went up, with me off, with a different kind of rabbit. But they didn't change the flap copy. So the detective on the cover of that one looks more like Elliot Ness from The Untouchables. Very rugged, craggy, handsome guy. But on the back jacket, it says the detective on the front cover is portrayed by Mr. Wolf. And so people bring me that to autograph.
That's very funny.
It doesn't look like you at all. What is it? So you know that you have an authentic autograph on that book, because I always draw a beard on it. But the model on the Who Plugged Roger Rabbit is Bob Hoskins. Nice. And then on Whacked, went back to being me again. And for the Jessica book, I don't really know. We haven't gotten that far yet, so I don't know.
And I know, because I know you've worked with some animators for some of the artwork for your books. So I assume
Jock Muller, Serendipity at Toontown. Disney gave me an animation cell, and it's an animation cell of Roger and Jessica, where they're hanging from the hook. Yeah. And she has just said, "Oh, I love you," and he says, "Oh, I love you too." And they're not in a lot of scenes together, and so that was a very, very special cell for me. And they had Bob Hoskins autograph it, Kathleen Turner, Steve Spielberg, Dick Williams, the animator, Bob Zemeckis. They all autographed it for me, and I was cruising Facebook one day, and a friend of mine, Tom Cito, who was an animator on the movie, put up a posting from a guy named Jock Muller, and it turned out that Jock was the guy who drew that scene.
Oh wow!
He had been working in England, and I didn't know him. I probably met him once or twice, but I didn't get to know him. And so I wrote to him, and I said, I've got that very scene hanging in my office. I mean, it's my favorite scene, all autographed. And we got to be really, really good friends. And when it came time to do the cover for Who Whacked Roger Rabbit, I needed a really good animator to do Toontown and some new characters. And I asked Jock if he would do it, and he did. So he did that for me. Kind of sad, because he passed away shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Died young. He was only 60. But great, phenomenal animator.
Yeah, and I'm just to add too about that cell that you have, because I know you posted you post that regularly online, the story, and I mean definitely tell the story about Bob Hoskins and that too. That is a phenomenally crazy story.
Yeah, so it was autographed by all the key players, and on the day that Bob Hoskins died, I looked at that cell, and his signature had disappeared. It was gone. It was like it had never ever been there. There wasn't even an indentation in the whatever they signed it on, whether they still sign it on the cell or the backdrop, I don't know. But there wasn't even an indentation that you could look at and see Bob Hoskins. And it happened on the day he died. And I thought, oh my God, this is like that painting of that guy that was up in the attic where the painting aged and he didn't. I mean, people die or their signature is going to disappear from my cell.
Well, I hope not.
Alive, Charlie Fleischer.
So no, I mean, yeah, Gary, this was great tonight. I
had a lot of fun. Thanks.
I mean, and I just want to say, Ken Harrington popped in. He said hi, Gary. Victor Romero says hi. Greg Yost. I mean, we did have a lot of people popping in here, but you were telling these great stories about here. DJ Bob, he's somebody whose show, I don't know if you know DJ Bob. He does this great show too. I got to get you guys in touch. But yeah, a bunch of folks popped in. So thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. And again, Gary, thank you. And I mean,
it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thanks for remembering who I am. Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, as you said, stay tuned. I mean, my fingers are crossed. I always am hoping that Roger Rabbit makes his big comeback. I think the world is ready for his return at this point now, and his craziness. So yeah, before we leave tonight, folks, I just want everybody to know next week, and you might be interested in this, Gary. We have an animator on, Tony Benedict, who actually worked back in the '60s on a lot of the Hanna-Barbera shows like Top Cat, Huckleberry Hound, and the Jetsons. So he'll be with us next week on IncrediChat. So folks, we will see you all next week. And once again, thank you, Gary, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.